Let's face it, it's not difficult for a narcissist to lose their mind. The reason for this is that their threshold for frustration tolerance and ability to regulate stress, failure, rejection, or disappointment is very low. And let's not forget that narcissists are deeply insecure people whose grandiose self-presentation doesn't match the reality of their qualities, abilities, and achievements. So even a little reminder of that can cause them to experience something known as narcissistic injury that causes them to spiral out of control, often onto a person who reminded them of their deficits or tried to hold them accountable for their actions. We would never advocate for you to provoke narcissists or intentionally hurt them, but you should be aware of all the things that make them show their true colors. In today's video, we will be counting down 10 things that would probably make any narcissist completely lose their mind. Number 10. Requiring that they take responsibility for their actions. People with narcissistic personality styles are notorious for avoiding responsibility for their own behavior at all costs, especially when that behavior signals their incompetence or dysfunction in any area of their lives. The underlying cause for this avoidance to take responsibility for their own actions is their low self-esteem and fragile egos, which they try to overcompensate with grandiosity and entitled behavior. If they were to admit that they were wrong, they would also have to admit that they are ordinary people who make mistakes, a stance which is in conflict with their desire to maintain an image of a superior person to other ordinary people. This maneuver of always avoiding responsibility requires a lot of effort and drains their already fragile ego, so they use maladaptive defense mechanisms and coping strategies such as denial, rationalization, blame shifting, deflection, and scapegoating other people. Number 9. Denying them instant gratification. In a paper published by psychologists Samin Vazir and David C. Founder in Personality and Social Psychology Review, the authors argue, based on the extensive meta-analysis of the literature on narcissism, that one of the key traits of narcissistic personalities is their impulsivity. They claim, based on literature, that narcissists almost always prioritize immediate gratification, especially in the areas that serve their so-called ego enhancement strategies, social status, social recognition, and short-term positive emotions over their long-term goals. What will make a narcissist really angry is denying them instant pleasure in those domains, which they believe they deserve by default. Number 8. Calling them out on their inappropriate behavior. Narcissists really dislike criticism, especially if it's merited and well-deserved, because it evokes an emotion that is probably one of the most difficult for them to process and regulate: shame. Not remorse, not regret, but shame. According to Dr. Ramani Durvasula, calling a narcissistic person out on their behavior is going to fill them with shame if it's done in front of other people, which can result in anger, deflection, blame shifting, and endless tirades about how the person who is calling them out is victimizing them. Besides, as Dr. Durvasula notes, calling them out on their egocentric, entitled, aggressive, or passive-aggressive, self-centered behavior is probably not going to result in any change of that behavior, especially if it's done in private, because the narcissists likely aren't even going to listen to anything that threatens their ego. Number 7. Pinging their particular insecurity. It is well established that the more grandiose a narcissist's defenses are, the more insecure they are likely to fundamentally be. They can be insecure about their looks, intelligence, status, money, popularity, or any other area of life that is likely to be judged by extremely superficial standards by other people. Since people with narcissistic personalities are completely fixated on manifestations of those superficial qualities, they can easily enter into a shame-based rage fit if you try to point out that they have, like all other people, deficits in those areas. While the so-called benign narcissists might be vapid, inane, and superficial, the more malignant types can also be psychologically or physically dangerous, which is why it is advisable that you don't provoke them. Number 6. Not explaining yourself to them or arguing with them. Narcissistic people are antagonistic by definition. They are sort of the opposite of people pleasers. This means that they thrive on conflict and chaos, and you might be wondering, why? Most people are not built for conflict and are reasonably agreeable. Narcissists are notoriously disagreeable. It is well known that the narcissist's focus is to obtain narcissistic supply by any means. They may enjoy positive narcissistic supply like admiration, adoration, and compliments. But if they run out of positive supply or just get bored with it, they will actively start testing limits with people in their surrounding by intentionally pushing their buttons and causing them to provide negative narcissistic supply, conflict, arguments, and chaos. If you restrict their supply by not arguing with them or explaining why you are not arguing with them, you might see them completely lose their minds because they are not getting the one thing they crave the most: attention. It is important to mention that this doesn't apply to reasoned, respectful, well-intentioned arguments that are an inherent part of every healthy relationship and that actually help people resolve conflicts in a civilized manner. Enjoying the video so far? Then don't forget to hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm. You will be able to learn a lot and it's free. Number 5. Implying that they may need professional help. A mere implication that a highly antagonistic, narcissistic person may need to visit a mental health professional can cause the narcissist tremendous rage and endless denials, projections, and gaslighting. They may insinuate or openly accuse a person who suggested it that the person may need professional help. They may deny having done anything that would merit a psychologist's or a psychiatrist's evaluation and help, or they may simply accuse that person of trying to get rid of them by accusing them of insanity. Number 4. Setting firm boundaries. One of the best ways to cope with a narcissist's never-ending manipulation tactics is to set boundaries and remain firm. It is also a thing that will infuriate the narcissistic person. Narcissists will always expect relationships to be one-way streets. They will require endless freedom and zero responsibility and accountability in their relationships, but will insist that the other person tolerate their constant boundary violation. Since they objectify people and view them as disposable sources of attention, narcissistic supply that is, they are likely to react poorly to strict boundaries they are not allowed to regularly cross. Number 3. Implication that they may lose power and control in the relationship. If a narcissist senses that the other person in the relationship may be tired of constant manipulation and lies and is ready to do something about it, they won't be very happy with that. The narcissist's thought processes in this case can be boiled down to this sentiment: if anybody is going to set the rules in the relationship or end the relationship, it is going to be me. They intensely dislike the idea that the other person is also a human being with agency and can cut their source of narcissistic supply at any time, so they may resort to doubling down on manipulation or lying to keep that person, making false promises to change, offering insincere apologies, or ending the relationships to prove that they are in control even when the relationship is ending. Number 2. Leaving them. This point ties up with the previous one. Narcissistic people do not like being left or broken up with. No one likes that, of course, but while a healthy person may genuinely grieve the loss of their partner as a person with all of their unique strengths and flaws, a narcissistic person simply doesn't like the idea of losing control by being broken up with, which once again evokes their shame and fear of losing an object, their partner, from which they can extract narcissistic supply in any shape or form. Number 1. Having their deficits publicly exposed. Narcissists have one primary objective: to protect their hypersensitive egos. Their inflated sense of importance, egotistical behavior, impaired empathy, and grandiosity are all a part of their strategy to protect that ego. For the narcissist, there is no greater ego breach than being publicly humiliated by having their deficits exposed to other people. This creates a lot of psychological distress and cognitive dissonance. Even the smallest public indicators that suggest that they might not be who they want to be, a high-status person, causes them to react in ways that would seem completely out of proportion for most people. This constant fear of having their weaknesses publicly visible is the very thing that impedes their ability to learn from their mistakes and dedicate themselves to self-growth. And if you like this video, then check out these related videos to see more.